Hey, welcome back to the Unbelievable Podcast. I am BJ Reidell, back here with my guy, Drew Mahowald, and today, well, we have some catching up to do first and foremost. If you may have noticed that we didn't have a Tuesday show, we apologize for that. We couldn't get our scheduling to line up early in this week. So we'll have a little bit of a kind of a breakdown of what went wrong last week through the Skol Scale, and we'll also check in on a couple of your responses as well. And then we'll get into our normal Thursday show, breaking down the Cowboys, taking a look at both that offense and that defense. A lot of individual playmakers across that depth chart. So we'll spend some time there, and then we will do our picks for the week per standard and finish up with a gambling lock as well. Didn't do too hot last week between the two of us, so
I don't think so.
We'll try to get back on track there. So that is the game plan for today. So let's hop right into it here with the Skol Scale. Do you have that? Do you have that pulled up right now?
Yeah, I do.
Excellent.
So last week, well, I'll start with kind of our ratings for now.
Right.
So I think I was 7.5 before the Chiefs game. After I think it's been 7.5 a couple weeks in a row because the Redskins game didn't do a lot, obviously.
Right.
But I want to drop it not too far though to 7.2, and that's just because, I mean, again, I had doubts about the offense and about Kirk outside against what should be, what was a tough environment, and he sort of played to my expectations, maybe even a little bit better than I thought he would. It's just like part of me is like obviously upset that Matt Moore scored 26 points, but also I understand that Andy Reid is a QB whisperer and he's going to get the best out of his guy every week. So I'm not that upset about it really.
I'm not either.
It's weird because I would have thought like obviously losing to a backup quarterback stinks, but it seems like this. It doesn't feel like it's a loss to a backup quarterback.
Yeah. So. I love perusing social media, whether it's Facebook, Twitter, Instagram, whatever, directly after a Vikings loss.
It's the best.
Because
there's fireworks everywhere.
Yeah, absolutely. Because I remember being that way. Like when I was in high school and when I was in probably the first couple of years when I was in college, every Vikings loss felt like the end of the world. So like I can completely resonate with the people that freak out and kind of come up with rather irrational reasoning as to why the Vikings lost. Like, I get it. I totally understand it, and I feel it. Like, I just don't really do that anymore. And here's the thing with this loss, too, and kind of why I'm not dropping my Skol Scale all that much. That's a really good football team in arguably the hardest environment to play in the NFL. You can make an argument for Seattle and you can make an argument for New Orleans for me. But those are the top three places to play. And honestly, Minnesota, too, is probably right up there as well. But as far as, the Vikings playing on the road, that's a really hard place to play. And it doesn't bode well for what the Vikings have had success with lately. Like, Kirk doesn't play well on grass. Do I have an explanation for that? No, I'm not a botanist. I don't understand why that happens. But he doesn't. He doesn't play well on grass. And he also doesn't play well away from home. We've established that, and that was kind of, as you said, reinforced by that loss. But they didn't play well, but they didn't get crushed either. Like it wasn't like the Vikings were a couple of not great plays away from coming out of there with an ugly win.
Yeah.
Right?
I mean, giving up a 91-yard touchdown.
Right, and that probably will never happen again in the Zimmer era.
Yeah, I know.
It
probably there's nothing close to that I can think of right now in the Zimmer era. I think like Ronnie Hillman had one against the Vikings just as a Bronco way back. That might be the only long one I can remember of. I can think of right now.
And the Vikings signed him 2 weeks later. Yeah, I mean, there was a lot of just out of character things that happened, and then there was also some stuff where it was just like you could point directly to someone and be like, "That sucked. You screwed up on that play, and you're part of the reason why we lost here." Like, I continue to go back to, and I still we are 5-6 days removed from this game. I can't get that screen pass to Irv Smith that got blown up in the backfield out of my head. Mm-hmm. Like, that was just such a bad play overall, and here's why it was a bad play. Okay, so first and foremost, The play call itself just wasn't great, okay? It just wasn't an ideal play call. I do like that they're finally throwing screens to Irv Smith. Happy about that. But the timing of it, they could see it coming clearly. That's a problem. The second reason, Kirk Cousins should have recognized that it was man coverage, okay? And man coverage, if you're, football savvy, you know that man coverage and screenplays don't work well. Man coverage is like the ultimate way to blow up a screen. Antoine Winfield literally made a living off of that type of thing. Lining up in man, sniffing it out, and blowing it up in the backfield, that's what happens. So if you're Kirk Cousins and you see that it's man coverage, now they did have kind of, when I watched that play again, they did have, it was disguised a little bit. So I give a little bit of leeway there, I suppose. But you're a franchise quarterback. You're getting paid $27 million a year. You should be able to recognize the difference between zone and man. That's just my opinion there. So he should have checked out of that. Now, that's either Kirk's fault for not doing that, or that's the coaching staff's fault for not giving him the ability to check out of that play. I can't imagine that he doesn't have the option to do that. That would baffle me. You pay a quarterback that much money and not give him the power to change the play. So that's problem number 2. And then problem number 3 is you could see it developing. Don't throw that pass. Just don't.
Or throw it in the dirt so there's not a loss of 7 yards.
Exactly. Do something. So between Kirk not throwing it in the dirt and Irv deciding to catch the ball, that's just like that whole play was fundamentally terrible. There was nothing good about it. It sets you back 6 or 7 yards.
Yeah,
on
7
first
yards.
Down. Basically a holding call plus a loss of down. They were doomed from the start there. And then you set him back at 2nd and 17, and let's just be real here. Kirk does not operate well when he's backed up in his own own side of the field. That's just kind of how it goes. As soon as that happened, I was like, we're screwed, And the Vikings had every opportunity to win the game then too, but they allowed a defense that has not played well all year to play well. Tyrann Mathieu was outstanding. I mean, we could see that coming from, a ways away. He was lined up all over the place. He did his job extremely well. He was, marquee in coverage as he's supposed to be. So all of those things went right for Kansas City and also went wrong for Minnesota in the same breath. So that part frustrates me, and I get that right there because the Vikings had the chance to win the game and they didn't. But at the same time, this is the Chiefs. I know Pat Mahomes wasn't on the field, but every other player on that team is still really good. Chris Jones, my God, I don't think we gave him enough love on the preview show because he was just disruptive all over the place. And the one thing that we've kind of been harping on for the last couple of weeks is that you can hide the fact that Pat Elflein is not playing great football. Oh boy, did he get exposed. And you could not hide him at all last week. So that's a problem, and that's a very real problem to me now because teams are going to figure out a way to scheme up Pat Elflein and make him look awful, or more awful, I suppose. That's a problem. And Bradbury also did not play his best game either whether it is as a run blocker or a pass protector, he did not do well. That does not bode well when the interior pressure is coming from Chris Jones because he's just dominant. He's way better than I thought he was. He played out of his mind. I mean, there was just extremely impressive performance, individual performance by him, and that did not work out well for the Vikings. But as a whole, these things are correctable for the most part, right? I mean, you don't expect
you think so.
Trey Waynes and Xavier Rhodes didn't play well, right? Obviously, but they're not going to play that poorly every single week. Trey Waynes isn't going to be facing Tyreek Hill, maybe the only wide receiver in the NFL that can truly match him step for step, right?
Beat him step for step.
Yeah, maybe the only guy. So that's not going to 146 yards or whatever that he allowed in coverage. That's not going to happen again, or probably won't happen again. I mean, he's going to have miscues. He's a number 2 corner, right? I mean, there's going to be mistakes there, but that poor of a performance is not going to happen again. And Anthony Harris, I don't know what the hell he was doing, but he couldn't tackle one-on-one in the open field, which is something we've kind of gotten used to, and maybe we shouldn't have gotten used to that. Because that is a difficult skill. There are a few safeties.
It did seem like Travis Kelce would make him miss every single time he caught the ball right away.
He just was not good in the open field. And maybe I've become too accustomed to him being a very good preventative safety, and he just wasn't that. So that sucked. And that was just – there's a lot of things that went wrong, but I don't expect a lot of those things to happen again, especially not against as good of teams. So – overall, I'm dropping my Skol Scale from, it was an 8.5 after the Redskins game, and I'm just going to drop it down to an 8. I'm still confident in this team. I still believe this team is a contender. I know there's a lot of people that are ready to jump off all of that, and I'm cool with that. You guys do what you will. But football season is literally a roller coaster of emotions. You go up and down every single week unless you win back-to-back weeks. That's just how it is. That's how it is in Minnesota. Every single week. You know, it doesn't matter who they beat or who they lose to. Every week it's Super Bowl contenders or blow this thing up, let's go get Trevor Lawrence.
It's just because of how much every game matters when there's only 16 games. And it's very easy to have that reaction one way or the other.
And I get that. But at the same time, like, there has to be, like, you have to have some consistent rationale about this team. Like, we have seen good, we have seen bad, but for the most part, you're going to get somewhere in between. And somewhere in between, in my eyes, is good enough to be 10-6, 11-5, 12-4, somewhere in there. We'll see how they do in this kind of difficult stretch of 3 or 4 games that they have. But, I mean, it didn't kill my confidence like it did for a lot of people. And I'm still hyped about this team. I believe that, you know, Cousins has the potential to change the narrative about himself, and that obviously starts this week with the Dallas Cowboys. So before we get into Dallas, why don't you give me the responses on the Skol Scale here?
Yeah, we got a couple that I wanted to highlight here. First one from our guy Adam West. He is at AWestE1. I think his name is actually just West with an E, but regardless, his score is a 7. He said, we fell a few tenths because it was foolish to be high after an ugly showing versus Washington. So he's thinking, you know, our problem in the first place was letting the Washington score, you know, increase at all, which I will say, for what it's worth, my score did not increase at all after the Redskins game. I think that was just kind of a get in there, get the job done, and leave as soon as possible type of game. Minnesota, so I didn't personally take a lot from that. I know based on his tweets and his brand that he was not very high on the Vikings after that game anyway. So that doesn't surprise me that he got that response.
Yeah, I think he's speaking more for the average Vikings fan when he says that. The Vikings fan who just gets hyped over a win or just, you know, is decimated by a loss. Like, again, like, I'm cool with that fan. It's just like I just don't feel the same way. I don't think that, like, to me, like, it needs to be more dramatic for me to have a dramatic reaction, right? And that sounds kind of cliche, I get that, but like it needs to be a 4-game winning streak for me to change, you know, my entire, you know, a 4-game winning streak, a 4-game losing streak, like a whole month of product that I can look at and be like, all right, this is what this team was, this is what I can take from it, and this is what I expect moving forward. One game is it's just never going to dictate my mood. You know? Like, I'm never going to allow
Unless
one
it's a playoff game.
Yes, if it's a playoff game, it's hell or high water. I get that. That's a whole different story. It's, you know, one and done type of situation. But during the regular season, like, I don't care. One loss isn't going to kill me. And you're still 6-3. You've won 67% of your games so far. That's pretty nice. I mean, I'm happy with that.
It doesn't suck.
It doesn't suck.
It's not awesome, I don't think, but it doesn't suck either. It's good. It's exactly good.
Yeah, I think Vikings fans in general just need to find a way to be a little bit. And honestly, I shouldn't say Vikings fans. It's NFL fans in general. Just need to find kind of a happy medium in your emotions during the regular season. Like, hold all that energy for the postseason, and then you can blow out the Lions after they blow it in the playoffs, because you know they will.
I like that. Yeah, I like that. Second one here from Mr. Minnesota at Mr. Minnesota with 2 O's at the end there. Minnesota, I think is what he's going for. He says, I like to retract my statement last week about Bama. He said, we want Bama. Losing to a Mahomes-less Chiefs was disappointing, but it was a game I was expecting us to lose prior to the season, so he's not too disappointed. Also noting that it's a missed opportunity that actually was bailed out with the Packers losing. So he's noting that actually every team in the NFC North lost. So Vikings didn't really lose any ground in the
whole
division
week was basically a wash. So
you
can
in
look,
the division it was.
You can look at that You can look at that one of two ways. I like the way he's looking at it, because that's how I look at it too, where it's basically the Packers lost, so nothing happened, right? But you can also look at it as the Packers lost, so the Vikings missed out on an opportunity to gain, you know, ground in the division, which I'm sure most Vikings fans are probably looking at it that way, which is fine. But again, like, you still control your own destiny. So if you go in and beat the Chargers, you can, even out that, because the Packers beat the Chiefs. So if the Vikings go in and beat the Chargers later on in the season, they can kind of even that out. And then if the Packers ultimately lose to the Vikings in Minnesota, you even that out as well. And then you get into like these deep tiebreakers. And basically what I'm ramping up to here is because of how last week unfolded, basically nothing happened within your division. Like the rest of the NFC.
The one thing that I think of is like that's kind of a wasted week, right?
Oh yeah,
like,
it is a wasted week.
It's a wasted week, which when you're not ahead is ultimately a net negative.
Right.
But it's definitely it's not nearly as bad as if one of those other teams had won, specifically Green Bay. So shout out to the Chargers in that regard. But I guess now we can kind of transition to this week, Dallas. I don't like the Cowboys. I like them. I dislike them more than I dislike the Packers.
Why is that? You said that a lot, but like
it's mostly because a couple of reasons. A, they're like mediocre 90% of the seasons, but they get every single Fox game of the week. And so
that is annoying. I don't like
that. But also B, why does Jerry Jones have to be the owner that's showed on TV? Why can't it be anybody else, or why do owners have to be shown on TV? So those are just two things that just bother me about this team, and so I would like for the Cowboys to lose more than I would like for the Vikings to win at this point.
I think part of it is that the Cowboys built their reputation as America's team, as a powerhouse to be reckoned with before we gave a shit about football.
Yeah,
that's like they won all their rings back when I was
right. That's true, because I've been paying attention to football probably since like 2003, 4, something like that. Yeah. I don't know. And I mean, how many years have the Cowboys been like really good? Like 2 of those years.
And Tony Romo always found a way to blow it. So.
2016 with Dak was really good. They were like 13 wins there, and then I think maybe they had one season with Romo where they got a first round bye or something, and they gave that away. So like that's why like the 2009 playoff game against the Cowboys at the Metrodome is probably my favorite game in Vikings history.
That was really fun. Sidney Rice had a couple touchdowns in that one. I remember
he had 3, and then with 2 minutes left, they threw a 4th touchdown to go up 34-3.
Yeah,
just
insult to injury. Love that. So this edition of the Cowboys honestly looks a lot like last year's edition of the Cowboys, which. I mean, okay, so this is my problem with this team is that they have a lot of like premier like highlight like they have a lot of players on their team that you're gonna put on like an ESPN graphic, right? Like promoting this game. They have so many different options.
Part of that is just because they're the Cowboys, and that's the
true.
Annoying part about the Cowboys.
But they do have a lot of guys that are like staples in the NFL. So you've got like Ezekiel Elliott, who everyone that's a football fan knows who Ezekiel Elliott is. He's consistently considered among the top 3, 4, 5 running backs in the NFL. You've also got Amari Cooper, who is a high draft pick. He's from Alabama, so everyone knew him before he even got to the NFL. Then he went to the Raiders, performed well there for a while, comes to the Cowboys, exceeded expectations after that trade, or at least our expectations, probably not Jerry Jones' expectations, given that he was traded for a first-round pick. Then you've got a bunch of offensive linemen who have been all pros in the past. Tyrone Smith is one of the best in the game. Travis Frederick and Zach Martin are two absolutely outstanding interior guys that were first-round picks. And you got Lyle Collins, who had the ridiculous draft slide due to some very incorrect coverage about his life that caused him to fall out of the draft completely, and he's become kind of what they expected him to be in the first round caliber talent. So you've got all these playmakers on the offensive side, but cohesively, like they're putting up points. I get that. They're number 1 in the NFL in points, but they're also playing against terrible teams. They beat the Giants twice. So I just don't think as a collective unit.
Well, okay, let's just go. Here's the wins. The Dallas Cowboy wins. Giants, Redskins, Dolphins. Those first 3 games. So they were undefeated through 3 games, and they beat those 3 teams.
Awful teams.
So everybody's like, okay. Nobody really believed in them. They go to New Orleans and get beat pretty good. Mm-hmm. Then they lose at home to the Packers. That's the Aaron Jones 4-touchdown game. Mm-hmm. And then they go to MetLife and lose to the Jets. That's the only win of the year for the Jets right now.
Right.
And then they bounce back against Philly at home, and then they have just again beat the Giants. So of those, 5 wins, you got 1 it's quality win, you can call it, against Philly. That's a team above 500. Which now on the flip side, if you wanted to look at the Vikings, you could perhaps say something similar about their wins. That a lot of like subpar teams, Raiders are more competitive now, but the Falcons, Lions, and then you got the Eagles, which might be the best win on that schedule. So,
right.
Worth noting that it seems like both teams are pretty similar in that, offense has been efficient. In terms of, I think both teams can run the ball and pass the ball efficiently, and both probably ranked top 10 in both categories, I would say. And then defensively, I think the way the Vikings secondary has, declined a little bit, I'd say. I think the defenses are pretty similar. I'd still give the edge to Minnesota overall, but I do think that both teams are kind of in a similar spot right now in terms of where they rank in the NFL.
Yeah. And I agree. They're very similarly constructed, and to me that all boils down to the quarterback position. I feel the same way about Dak Prescott that I think most of you guys feel about Kirk Cousins. I just don't think he's that good. I'm sorry. Like I don't get it. I don't get the hype around Dak Prescott. Like he's not. To me, the difference between a good QB and a great QB is consistency. So Prescott is the same as Kirk Cousins to me, where it's like it's kind of a roller coaster. You never really know for sure what you're going to get, but then every once in a while he's going to light it up, and it looks like you're like, wow, he should get paid $40 million a year. But I get the hesitancy with Jerry Jones. I mean, ultimately, this is the type of, like, if you have a quarterback that is capable of winning in the NFL, he's going to get paid by someone, and it probably should be the place that drafted him. Quarterbacks very rarely leave. But I just don't, I don't think that Dak Prescott is a Super Bowl caliber quarterback. He doesn't elevate the talent around him. This has been Ezekiel Elliott's team. You can say what you want to me. I just don't care. Like, this has been Ezekiel Elliott's team. Dak does not function without Zeke. Like, he's not the same quarterback without him, period. And the statistics will back that up, too, if you want to look that up. So, I think that he's a quality quarterback, but he's not a game changer by any means. It's the weapons around him that make the difference. I mean, Amari Cooper literally changed the trajectory of Dak's career. He had that great rookie year, kind of fell apart a little bit his second year. And then Amari shows up, and all of a sudden, he can throw the ball downfield again. And part of that is the presence of Ezekiel Elliott in the backfield and kind of the...
Yeah. By the way, if you watch Cowboys, I mean, they're on all the time, so I'm sure you've noticed this, but Amari Cooper is always, wide open when he's thrown to. I think, I've kind of forgotten about him, when you talk about, best route runners in the NFL.
Right.
But he's got to be up there because he's always just wide open. And I think even the Packers game, the first few weeks of the season, we were really high on Jair Alexander because he had shut down all these great receivers and he kept the Vikings in check. And then in that game, Amari just owned him. And it was actually one play where an interception bounced off of Cooper's hands, I believe, and into that. Alexander got an interception that game, but it was literally because Cooper got 5 yards of separation on him, and then the ball hit him in the shoulder pads, went in the air, and Jair caught it. Amari's always open, and I think that helps Dak a lot. So, and I'm with you. Where for forever I've doubted Dak. I didn't think he was going to be the guy, but I will say he's impressed me quite a bit this year. In terms of, I mean, I think he's a gamer. I've talked about Kyle Sloter in that way, where it seems like he. That sounds really bad making that comparison.
I like it.
Prescott,
I like that comparison.
Kyle Sloter, but they're. It seems like they really like that moment late in the game. And I think Dak is Romo was like that too, though, where he actually for as many moments in the playoffs he didn't quite live up to, and in fourth quarter, he was really good in the fourth quarter regular season, and I think Dak is a little bit of the same way.
Yeah. So Dak can do all the things that you want a quarterback to do, but he doesn't do them consistently enough for me to feel confident that the Vikings can't rattle him. I think that getting pressure off the edge on him will forcing him to step up in the pocket where he's not at whenever Dak has pressure on him, I'm not comfortable. I don't feel confident in him throwing the football. And then
that's fair. I mean, I really do think he is similar to Kirk, like you said, because both,
they're in the same class for sure.
And it's one of those, like, they're both in really good situations right now.
Right.
They both have an elite back. They both have two really good receivers. I think Gallup is really good. I mean, not to Diggs or Thielen level, but I think he's
good.
Going to become something like that eventually. You got, if you want to go this route too, you got like a number one tight end who's aging a little bit slower. You got, and then I think Dak's got the edge on the offensive line, obviously. But point is, there's playmakers all around for both of these guys, and I think it's elevated their games. And they're both quarterbacks I think that you can win or contend for a Super Bowl with, but it's, again, one of those where they need to have the right pieces around them to get that done and to elevate their game as well.
Yeah, so, like, to me, like, what if you put Dak on, like, Seattle, where they don't have as much around, like, he doesn't have as much help around him to work with. Like DK Metcalf is great, but he runs two routes, right? Tyler Lockett is exceptional, but he's also undersized, and there are limits to his game as well. Their offensive line there, definitely not the Cowboys' offensive line, and it's not very good. They're also injured too, and they don't have the running game. I mean, they're okay. I mean, I just can't ever buy into when Seattle's running the football because they switch off between a bunch of kind of mediocre guys. But my point being here is, if he doesn't have all the pieces around him, if you put him in a situation like Seattle, which is, a very good football team, we consider them to be a top 10 team in the NFL. Russell Wilson is MVP right now. But if you switch Russell Wilson and Dak Prescott around, the Cowboys are pretty much unstoppable probably. And Seattle's probably not in the playoffs, in my opinion. Because, Wilson elevates the talent around him, makes them even better than they actually are, guaranteed. And then Dak just kind of works with the tools that he has, and he does a fine job with that. But he's not. I just don't think that he's a game-changing quarterback, and I don't. I think this is just what he is. I think he's a solid piece on a contending football team, and that's kind of what the Cowboys are. And when you have this offensive line, I mean, can you build a better offensive line than Dallas has? Honestly, I don't think you can. Like, Tyrone Smith is not the same player that he was a couple of years ago when I used to salivate over him, but he's still one of the preeminent left tackles in the NFL right now. La'el Collins is as good as you're going to find at right tackle. Zach Martin and Travis Frederick are quite literally the best at their positions, probably. Or first or second. I think Brandon Brooks is the only guard in the NFL that's better than Zach Martin right now. So then you've got Connor Williams, who is a talented player that is eventually probably going to get to a very a Pro Bowl level at some point in his career. So that's what you've got up front. Like, how do you not have success with that offensive line? I mean, they're stacked, and this is the biggest challenge that the Vikings defensive line is going to face all year. I expect pressure to be difficult to come by, just in general. I mean, we saw the way that Schwartz last week was able to lock up Danielle Hunter for the first time in basically his career. Mm-hmm. I think he's facing a similar situation this week. I mean, Mitchell Schwartz might be the best right tackle in the NFL right now, so I guess you get a little bit of a drop off. But this is what they're staring into right now. Griffin's going to be going against Tyrone Smith, and then you've got Hunter against La'el Collins, who I think I would give a slight edge to Hunter there. But overall, this is a difficult matchup to get pressure just because of how these guys are massive. They move they can move anyone. And that includes Linval Joseph and Shamar Stephen up front too.
And Joseph might not play.
Right.
It sounds like he's banged up, so
yeah,
not great.
Yeah, the situation.
Now, for what it's worth, this was 3 years ago now, but the Vikings did play very well defensively against Dallas during their big year in 2016. When Dak is a rookie, Zeke is a rookie, went into U.S. Bank Stadium. Obviously, things have changed since then. Amari Cooper's in the mix now. Yada, yada, yada. But
the coach is still the same, though, and the coach is not a difference maker.
Yeah.
He is not a difference maker. He might be a fine coach, but he is not going to – he's not Kyle Shanahan. He's not Sean Payton. He's not going to draw up these phenomenal –
He's way more of a camaraderie guy than a scheme.
He's a P.J. Fleck type.
Yeah.
So, I mean, you've also got Randall
Cobb.
I
don't even think that's accurate. He's not even P.J. – because P.J. Fleck, I feel like he at least builds a noticeable culture. he builds a noticeable culture. Garrett's just kind of there, like he's just gonna kind of tell a guy, oh,
kind of
good
is
try.
a placeholder.
I don't know if you've noticed, but like every time they show him on a Fox, he's just clapping. He's like, good job, good try. Like that's all he does. You'll notice it this week too. I mean, that's all. It's the only thing that they show him doing on TV.
He just doesn't. He doesn't change the game at all. He doesn't elevate his offense. The Vikings are not going to get schemed up this week like they did last.
By the
week.
way, Kellen Moore is the offensive coordinator for Dallas. He looks like he's about 15.
He was very, very good those first 3 games, and whatever he was doing then has not really it has not evolved past what it was at during the first 3 weeks of the season when it looked like Kellen Moore was going to force Jason Garrett out of a job. But I do think that he's a quality play caller. I guess he's had an up and down year for sure. The last guy here is Jason Witten, who is hilarious. That he's still relevant. He's not bad, by the way.
I mean, how similar are he and Kyle Rudolph's games right now? I mean, obviously, like Witten's more of a pass catcher right now, just because Rudolph's being asked to block a ton. Yeah. But they're both reliable in terms of being able to catch the ball. They're not going to drop passes. They're both crafty in that they'll find like the open spot in the zone, but they're not going to beat you with quickness. They're not going to beat you after the catch. They're both number 82 for what it's worth. They're like, I mean, they're both kind of similar right now, and I think it's yeah.
I don't expect him to beat Anthony.
He's much better at football than he was on Monday Night Football.
That's facts. Yeah. All right, so on the defensive side of the ball now, again, like this unit has 5 or 6 guys that are headline caliber players, guys that have done big things in the past or are currently in the midst of a very solid season or just got a big contract or they talk a lot like DeMarcus Lawrence. There's a lot of talent just all over here, but as a complete unit, they still give up points.
Mm-hmm. Well, they give up a lot. I mean, look at these names. There's a bunch that just jump out. You know, Obviously Sean Lee when he's healthy, which is not often, but when he's healthy, guy could play, and he's one of the better linebackers in football. Leighton Vander Esch, tackling machine. Jalen Smith, another beast. That linebacker trio right there, not bad.
Leighton Vander Esch is literally just a reincarnation of Sean Lee, basically.
Like, yeah, and I don't know if he's going to be healthy or not. I should probably look at that, but I know he was one of those guys banged up last week. And then they got Malik Collins on defensive line. That was a guy that I think we both liked a couple years ago in the draft. Xavier Woods, Byron Jones. I mean, there's players, and then DeMarcus Lawrence obviously too. There's some serious players. Robert Quinn too. I didn't even know he was a Cowboy. Yeah. Michael Bennett now. You just traded for him.
I hate that guy. I can't stand Michael Bennett. He drives me nuts. And his shoulder pads too.
Yeah.
I hate his shoulder pads. There's star power all over here. I think that it starts up front with DeMarcus Lawrence, Tank Lawrence, if you will. His bark is bigger than his bite at this point, I think. I mean, he's still very, very good. He's going to give you double-digit sack numbers every year. But he talks so much for a guy that has, I think he has 4.5 sacks this year. And he gets pressures, too. It's not all about sacks. I get that. But he talks so much more than he gets results, I think. But he is a big-name player, and he's going to be tough to block. But for what it's worth, I mean, Riley Reif has been playing very, very well.
Yeah, he has. Overall, I mean, I think there's still lots of improvements to be made on the offensive line. I think a lot of it's in the interior, and I think the tackles, the bookends, have been relatively reliable.
And that's where the problems are going to come from the Cowboys, is off the edge. Robert Quinn, I think, is a little bit washed, though. I don't think he's not the same guy that he was when he played for the Rams.
He's leading in sacks. He got 6.5.
Yeah, but that's really he doesn't set the edge like he used to.
No,
he's not as good in run defense. He's closer to a one-trick pony now than he was when he was one of the faces of the Rams defense a couple of years ago. I mean, does anyone even remember that Robert Quinn played for Miami? That's because he was irrelevant there. You know, I mean, he's fine. He's a good player. He's a quality player. But there's a reason why they went and got Michael Bennett too. so they can have an extra rotation guy. And for what it's worth, I don't think Michael Bennett is that great either.
Yeah, I'm with you there.
God, his shoulder pads piss me off. I hate that so much. He wears like kicker pads. So annoying. He looks absolutely ridiculous. So anyways, they've got some strong pieces on that defensive line. They will be able to get pressure, but for what it's worth, the interior is. I think the Vikings will get it'll be easier to block from the interior this week than it has been in the past, because Malik Collins, for what it's worth, he's a good player, a quality player, but he wins with finesse more than he wins with power, and power has been killing Pat Elflein lately. It's not finesse. It's just he can't block these bigger, these steamrollers coming from 3-tech or nose. And that's not Malik Collins' game. He's more of a stunt master, a guy that's going to get around you with finesse. And so I do have more confidence in the interior to have a better game this week, specifically Bradbury and Elflein, who look overmatched by, like I said, bigger players that'll bull rush you to hell. So, but that second level, as you said before, that's maybe, when they're healthy, maybe the best linebacking core in the NFL. At least 4-3 linebackers, that is. Van Der Esch has the potential to be one of the very best players in the game. Jalen Smith is already one of the best players in the game, and he's being paid as such. And I'm still pissed that the Vikings didn't gamble on him with a second-round pick the year he got drafted.
Yeah, that's true.
And then you got Sean Lee, like you said. He's one of the best cover – when he's on the field, he's one of the best cover linebackers in the game. He flows sideline to sideline as well as anyone. He's a sure tackler. He's dangerous. He's smart. He calls that defense. He does a lot of things that will disrupt what you're trying to do on offense. Put it simply, he's very difficult to scheme up. So that trio of linebackers is your biggest issue here. But the secondary is I would say below average for sure. There are names in this group that, Jordan Lewis from Michigan was a high draft pick. Chidobe Awuzie from Colorado was also a great prospect. Neither of those two guys have really panned out to the level that I think the expectations set for themselves.
It's important to remember Thielen's not playing, from what I understand. Right. I don't think he'll be on the field. So it's going to be Diggs, who I don't think we mentioned this earlier about the Chiefs game, but he had one reception in that game.
Okay, he needs to get the ball. I forgot to say that. I've been thinking about this all week. They need to force him the ball.
The fact he had 5 targets, which that number needs to be 10 to 12 when especially when Thielen's not on the field.
It should be 15 when he's not out there.
Yeah, just force it to him. And that's the thing we talked about with Kirk, where he's gonna follow his reads, whatever the reads are, whether it's if it's Treadwell's number 1 read, if it's Diggs, if it's Thielen, if it's Chad Beebe, I don't know, it doesn't matter, but he's gonna follow the reads regardless. He's not gonna take the snap and look to his number 1 guy. So some of that's good, some of that's bad, but I think it's part of the reason Treadwell just randomly showed up with 358 against the Chiefs. He might do it again, but it's just part of the game plan sometimes, where guys randomly get targeted a ton, and for whatever reason, Diggs was just completely a non-factor in that game, and it didn't even seem like they were trying to give him the ball. Which you got to get your playmakers the ball, and you have to take the chances, especially with Diggs down the field, a guy that can make the contested catch like that.
Yep. And I think this is the type of secondary that you can force feed a wide receiver on. Mm-hmm. There's no one here that's going to make you pay. Byron Jones, I believe it's 32 games now without an interception for him. He has 2 in his professional career. He's an outstanding athlete, like a world class athlete. Broke the the standing long jump record at the combine when he was there as a prospect out of UConn. One of my favorite prospects that I've ever had the pleasure of scouting. So he's outstanding, and I like him a lot. But he's not a playmaker. He's more just a cover guy. He's not going to change the game the way that a Richard Sherman would. He's more like he's more like you remember Nnamdi Asomugha, where he would just I do. He would just he wouldn't show up in the stat sheet at all, but his whole side of the field would just never do anything. That's kind of what I see Byron Jones like. He's just a good quality cornerback that just shuts down a receiver. But I don't think he can shut down Stephon Diggs, and I don't think that you can I think that Kirk Cousins can get away with throwing at Byron Jones because he's not He's just not dangerous like that. Especially because Diggs is as good as it gets with contested catches and making up for poor throws and that type of thing as well. I think this is a secondary that you can pick apart, even with BC Johnson and Laquan Treadwell probably having to see more snaps than they are typically used to.
Well, like the Vikings didn't have much of a problem against Detroit,
No.
And I guess if you want to, you can kind of compare. What do you think about Detroit's secondary? What do you think about Dallas's? Because that's a road game indoors. This is a road game indoors.
That helps.
And the Vikings put up 42 in that game, most of it without Adam Thielen. Didn't seem to have much of an issue moving the ball in that game. So, to me, this compares somewhat similarly to that matchup. And from that perspective, I'm a little bit optimistic about how the Vikings will play, at least on offense.
Yeah, I agree. Really, the biggest factor here is that they are playing away from U.S. Bank Stadium to me. Because I think a lot of these matchups, individually speaking, the game-changing matchups here, I think the Vikings actually fare pretty well across the board. I like the Vikings' offensive line against this very solid front four for Dallas. I don't think that – so the way that linebackers change the game is just by being disciplined, sure tacklers and breaking things up in the backfield. I mean, Dalvin Cook doesn't seem to be stoppable in that way. Like even last week when he had 100%.
No, I'm not. It's linebackers are. It's how we talk about the running back position mattering less and less. It's almost like that's happening with linebacker a little bit as well, just because of the way that the game is changing so much from run first to kind of pass first, and it seems like coverability matters way more from that position or that area of the field than your run stopping ability. But
no one their linebackers would be covering is probably going to be getting the ball all that much anyways in the Vikings offense.
That's
the way
what I'm
that
saying. Yeah. It's it seems like they're for as talented as that trio is, it doesn't seem like they'll have much of an impact. And now I think Sean Lee is a very good cover linebacker, and obviously Jalen Smith can fly all over the field, so can Van Der Esch. But I think, for example, I think Dalvin's going to be able to beat those guys to the edge with all that outside zone that they run.
Yeah. So I mean, as a whole, I think there are Dallas has enough good players to make you pay if you make mistakes, right? So if the Vikings play like they did in Kansas City last week, 50% completion from Kirk, dropped passes, poor throws, bad play calling. If they do all of those things again, they're probably going to lose this game because Dallas is good enough to take advantage of those things.
Mm-hmm.
If the Vikings play the way that we have seen them play, and we know now what they are capable of playing, this is a game they can definitely win. I don't think that Dallas is that great of a home field advantage either. I think there will be a lot of Vikings fans in Dallas. I mean, obviously, Jerry's world has this image of being this massive stadium that's got all of the all the assets, everything that you could ever want in a stadium. But Dallas fans, to me, are mostly bandwagon fans for I don't. They're America's team, but that's because they're spread out across the United States because a bunch of people from the '90s just picked the best team. That's kind of what
this is true.
That's kind of what their fans like. I just don't think their home field advantage is nothing like Kansas City. It's
also
like
how
that.
Packers fans like.
Yeah,
I mean, because back in the '60s when they won those Super Bowls, same thing.
So, give me one reason why the Vikings win, one reason why the Vikings lose, then we'll move into our picks here.
Vikings win the game if they get the ball to Stephon Diggs, and he makes the big play. Because I think what the Vikings lacked in the Chiefs game was kind of that big explosive play. Chiefs got a bunch of those. Tyreek Hill, and then the big run from Damian Williams. Those are the type of plays that you can flip a game around with. Vikings have had those, and it seems like every game, before last week, during that 4-game winning streak, didn't have one last week. Get the ball to Stephon Diggs, and you're going to be able to prosper on offense. I think, if the Vikings lose this game, I think it's just going to be, again, it's the road thing, man. It's the road thing in prime time with Kirk. That's my biggest concern.
Opportunity to change the narrative here.
Yes, opportunity to change the narrative, and that's what I want to see from Kirk. I've seen some discussion on social media about what does it take to extend Kirk Cousins after this season or next season or whatever. And I just want that narrative change. Like, I don't want to be going into a primetime game against a decent opponent and just automatically think loss.
Yeah.
So hopefully that'll change, and maybe he can start kind of mending that boo-boo this week.
This is literally a prime, no pun intended, opportunity for Kirk to take it, to do that. I mean, this is a quality opponent playing away during prime time. Everyone's going to be watching. This is definitely the opportunity to change the narrative, and I think that there's a very, very good chance the Vikings walk out of here with the victory. Now, to me, if Ezekiel Elliott has under 50 yards in this game, the Vikings are going to win. To me, that's the difference here. If Dallas is unable to get the running game going, they don't have any, like you said, any of those breakaway plays, those big, game-breaking plays that, kind of turned the Vikings on their head last week. If they don't have any of those, and I expect that it's either going to come from Elliott or Cooper, who did not practice as of this recording, so we might not even see Cooper this week. If you contain Ezekiel Elliott, this game is over to me. I think the Vikings can win in every other facet of the game. So that's why they would win. Now, if they lose, I think that a lot of that comes down to the opposite. Obviously, if Ezekiel Elliott runs all over the place, the Vikings are in trouble. But on the flip side, if they are able to get pressure where I don't believe they're I don't see this as a game where the Vikings offensive line comes up as kind of the scapegoat. I don't see this as one of those games. Now, if I'm wrong about that, the Vikings are in big trouble because we've seen what happens when that offensive line gets no push. I mean, Dalvin Cook had nothing to work with last week. Still came up with, 75 yards, 72 yards, something like that. But if he can't get going, that's a problem. And if you're not giving Kirk the option to use play action effectively, to use that screen game well, to get the ball out of his hands quickly, that's a problem. The Vikings lose those football games. Yeah. So that's the difference to me. But overall, I mean, we can just go straight into the picks here. I expect the Vikings to win this game. Early in the week, I was a little bit more hesitant. I'm more confident now. But I'm going into this week that I believe that Kirk is going to break the curse this week. I believe he's going to change that narrative. I think it's going to come together for him this week, and I think he'll have the opportunity to, not shut everyone up because he's got a lot of work to do in order to actually, get everyone to stop talking.
He's going to catch people's attention, be like, "Oh, that's different."
Yeah,
one of those type of things.
Absolutely, yeah. So I'm taking the Vikings here. I'll have them winning by 6 or something like that. It's not going to be. It's a Dan Bailey revenge game for what it's worth.
Dan Bailey revenge game.
I could see Dan Bailey being the difference here.
That'd be nice. I have Dallas winning this game, unfortunately. It's another case of me doubting Kirk in a primetime game on the road against against a solid football team. But I do think this, if both teams play to their potential, I think it would be a really, really good game because I think both, like I said, are very evenly matched at this point. Overall, talent-wise, I think I give the Vikings an edge just because I think there's more defensive playmakers. But the home field advantage for Dallas, plus the Kirk primetime game, whatever is going on, makes me give Dallas the edge in this game. So I'm going to pick Dallas by something within a score.
I think that if I was a Cowboys fan, I would take the Cowboys to win this game. To me, it's one of those games where it's like your bias just kind of shows. Like it's a toss-up. You've got talent across the board on both teams. The edge.
In terms of talent, both these rosters are potentially top 5 in football.
Yeah. So I mean, it makes sense that we'd split this week. I say Minnesota, you say Dallas, because this really is a coin toss type of game. But I think my bias, my homerism, being a Vikings fan, and I just really, really want to see Kirk break through. I don't like him all that much, but he's still my quarterback. He's the quarterback of my favorite football team. I just want to see him do something. I want to see him. I want to see it happen. Period. So change the narrative, Kirk. Do it for me. Obviously, that's going to be the title of this episode. So, next one up here, Chargers coming.
Let's give a I don't think I did very well picks wise last week. What's the summary from last week?
Yeah,
I think I only got like 7 right last week. It wasn't great.
Last week there were 14 games on the docket. I went 9-5. You went 7-7. So I gained 2 games on you. Cumulatively speaking, now you are 88-46-1. I am 79-55-1. So overall, the two of us are above average for the season relative to expert picks. I believe you're still among the best across the internet. But last week was definitely not one of our better performance.
Yeah.
I mean, it was one of my better performances because I've had so many 500
now
weeks
I
this
think
year,
you sent to me that I was leading that when PFF
you would be leading
their
them.
experts. I was leading them by 4 games going into that last week, and then I kind of had a subpar week. But
7-7 isn't terrible though. And last week had a lot of things that kind of broke differently. I think, especially for your specific kind of. Like your MO, like Tennessee didn't do you any favors last week.
Yeah, I seem to pick Tennessee every freaking week.
Yeah,
and sometimes they're 4-5. I maybe have picked them every single week.
Tennessee and Cleveland just continue to let us down.
Which is interesting now because they're both playing above 500 teams this week. I wonder how that's gonna. I have my picks in, and I don't know what you're gonna do. I'm interested.
All right, so let's get it started here. Chargers, who coming off of that big win against Green Bay, it looks like the Chargers are going to do the Chargers thing where they suck early in the year and then they just turn it on in November and December and become, a wild card team. I think that's going to happen. They're going into Oakland, who is so much better than I thought they were going to be when I was watching Hard Knocks. My God, dude.
Yeah.
I don't know. I thought that team was going to be a disaster.
They're going to have,
they're very good.
That first round pick from Chicago is going to be like a top 10 pick now.
It's going to be better than their pick.
Yeah.
So I will take the Chargers. Just based off of what I just said, I think they're going to fulfill their narrative.
I'm taking the Chargers too.
Excellent. All right. That game starts in about a couple hours here, so I mean that pick's probably not even going to matter.
So people are going to listen to this, and the game's already going to be over. So hopefully we got the right team here.
Yeah. All right. So the next one on the docket here is an NFC North matchup between the two bottom dwellers here. Detroit heads to Soldier Field. Again, I still don't think that Detroit is as bad as their record says there is. Chicago, on the flip side, is definitely as bad as their record says there is. And Mitchell Trubisky is officially soft. Dumbest thing ever. Going to the media and saying that he wants to shut down the TVs in Hallis Hall because it's all that negative energy. No, Mitch. It's because you suck.
Play better.
Yeah,
just play better.
1, play better, and 2, the reason why you want to turn off the TV is because everyone on the planet is saying you're a terrible quarterback. It's not the rest of your team. It's you. You suck, and you're going to lose to Detroit this week. What do you think?
Yeah, I got the Lions. My favorite thing when I'm down in the dumps, I just think about Chicago trading up one spot, giving up. So they gave up the number 3 pick. They gave up 2 third-round picks. They gave up a 4th-round pick to move up one spot to draft Mitch Trubisky. Meanwhile, was it 8 picks later, Deshaun Watson was drafted, and then
9 picks
3 more picks after that, whatever it was, Patrick Mahomes was drafted. The Bears end up with Mitch Trubisky.
I understand why some people were hesitant about Patrick Mahomes. I mean,
yeah, I do too.
I can hindsight bias this one like the rest of you guys listening and be like, how the hell would you not pick Mahomes number 1? Well, there were a lot of concerns with Mahomes coming out. Like the system that he played at Texas Tech was not conducive.
But
there's a lot of that stuff. But how do you not take Watson there? Like Watson is definitive. He should have gone 1 that year.
Yes, he should have.
Anyways, back to our picks here. I've also got Detroit winning. So Chicago eventually. It looks like that prediction that you had, that bold prediction that Chicago is going to finish last. I think that's going to. I think
it was less than 8 wins. I think that's or 7.
Oh, that's going to happen. That's going to happen.
Yeah,
they're a bad football team.
I have a bet with Buddy that I have the. I think our over/under is 8 wins for the Bears. He wins if it's 9 or more. I win if it's 7 or less, and then we split if it's 8. So I'm feeling pretty good about that right now.
You should. Next one up here, AFC North matchup. Baltimore heads to Cincinnati. Lamar Jackson coming off of potentially.
Don't need to discuss this one. Baltimore.
Yep, I got Baltimore too. Buffalo at Cleveland. Cleveland really needs this win. Buffalo.
They've needed to win for a while now.
Yeah, no kidding. Buffalo still I have. There's so many question marks around Buffalo, and I think it all is with Josh Allen. I think that Cleveland has more talent.
Mm-hmm. Freddie Kitchens is perhaps the worst head coach in football.
Maybe the worst head coach like the last like 5
Since Hugh
or 6
Jackson.
years. Since Hugh Jackson. Since the last Cleveland coach. Yeah. So who you got in this one?
Cleveland. I don't know. I haven't learned my lesson. I'm going with the Browns.
I have learned my lesson. I'm taking Buffalo. And it's not
It's
even
Buffalo's not good. They're
They're not.
They're not good.
It's not even because I don't think that Cleveland's the better team. It's because I have no faith in Cleveland anymore.
Yeah, and I completely understand. I don't know. If Buffalo's at home, I might take them, the Bills Mafia, but I'm taking the Browns. By the way, matchup of two great fan bases, Bills Mafia, Dog Pound.
That's true. Two long-suffering fan bases as well.
Yes, that too.
How many years of no play? Buffalo has the one playoff game.
They got it
3
a couple years ago with Tyrod Taylor and Nathan
Cleveland
Peterman.
has the year with Derek Anderson and Braylon Edwards from that was 10 years ago now. But anyways, next matchup here. Kansas City at Tennessee. It's pointing towards Pat Mahomes playing. Tennessee is falling apart.
I am going with Tennessee.
Oh my God! Stop!
I don't know. That's the thing about this team is they play well in the most they play way better when they're underdogs. When they're supposed to win, they don't win. So it just seems like a game. Like last year, New England went into Nashville and they lost by 20 something to the Titans. I don't know.
Did you see Marcus Mariota running routes today?
Yep, I did.
Tannehill, by the way, hasn't been that bad. I'm still taking Kansas City, even if Matt Moore plays. I've got Kansas City in this one.
Fair enough.
Next one up here, Atlanta goes to New Orleans. Is this one worth talking about? Saints 2. Next, New York Showdown.
Do we have to pick a winner? Do we have to?
You could predict a tie.
I kind of want to.
Sam Darnold is, my God, he's sliding. He's snowballing. I think
he gave everything he had in that Cowboys win, and then it's been just abysmal from there.
That was to keep the hype alive, and everything since then it's just been not good.
But I'm taking the Jets. Actually, I'm taking the Giants.
Okay.
I'm changing my mind. My thought was, the Jets are at home, but that's literally where the Giants play. So,
right. And that's why it's so difficult. I'm taking the more talented roster here, and that's the Giants.
Good point.
Arizona at Tampa Bay is the next one here. Kyler Murray goes to Tampa. Continue his offensive rookie of the year campaign. I think that he's got to be right up there with Josh Jacobs. And Bruce Arians gets a revenge game. Who got in this one?
Oh yeah, I didn't even think about the revenge game narrative here. Mm-hmm. But I have Arizona in this game because Jameis Winston played too well last week to have 2 of those games in a row. So definitely going with the Cardinals.
Kingsbury has been, with the exception of Matt LaFleur, has been kind of the bright spot on new coaching hires this year, surprisingly. He's been a lot better than I thought he would be. That said, Bruce Arians is going to dominate him. I've got Tampa Bay. They're playing at home, too. I'm with you that Jameis Winston doesn't normally have back-to-back good games, but Mike Evans and Chris Godwin that's gotten pretty scary down there. So I'm going to take Tampa Bay in a shootout here. I would bet the over in that game for sure.
Yeah.
Next one here is Miami at Indianapolis. I don't think we need to talk about that one.
We do not.
Indianapolis for both of us. Carolina goes to Lambeau Field. Kyle Allen is officially the guy. It looks like Cam Newton has played his last snap in Carolina, at least for now. And they will take on a Green Bay team that got absolutely shellacked by the Chargers last week. And they will bring in a running game as fierce, if not way better, than what San Diego did last week to Green Bay's run defense with Christian McCaffrey leading the charge.
I got to pick the Packers. If this is a road game, though, I might lean Carolina, but I'm going with Packers, even though I do think McCaffrey's in for a big day.
I'm interested to see how Matt LaFleur rebounds, because I think some of the things that he was doing early in the year are starting to get figured out, and rookie coaches tend to kind of fall apart when teams start to figure out what they're doing offensively. I'm still taking Green Bay. I need to see, but I am very interested in this game because Carolina is a talented team. They've got a lot of good players all around, but ultimately this comes down to the quarterback position for me. Aaron Rodgers is so much better than Kyle Allen. I'm not really a full believer there yet, so Green Bay for me.
Yeah, you're right.
Los Angeles Rams, they head to Pittsburgh this week. Pittsburgh, I don't know how they keep winning, but they do.
There was a fluke last week. Okay, so that was my lock of the week last week. Was Colts -1.5 over the Steelers. So I was watching that game. I had lots of
Laces out
lots of U.S. currency on that game, and it was such a fluke because the Colts moving the ball exceptionally well the whole game.
Yep.
And they just kept turning it over in the most stupid ways. I think Minkah Fitzpatrick had a 90-something yard interception return for a touchdown. Mm-hmm. I think they fumbled twice more in the red zone. Like, it was just
a lot of bad stuff.
Yeah, a lot of stuff that was very fortunate for Pittsburgh to win that game. Made me very frustrated. Rams are going to win this game, I think, pretty easily.
Yeah, I've got the Rams as well. I think that I heard this. I don't remember who I was listening to on the radio that said this, but that Jalen Ramsey is kind of that trade has kind of given this team some energy, some swagger, whatever word you want to throw in there. And I buy into
whatever they want to believe, I guess.
And I also really buy into the theory right now that cornerback is the preeminent position on defense right now, that it has overtaken pass rusher as the most important position, just based off of how offenses play now. I think that the Rams might be back, and this is not a great game to kind of determine if that's fact or not, because Pittsburgh might have like the weakest roster in the NFL right now as a whole, with all the injuries and whatnot. I just don't understand how they keep winning. So I don't see them winning this football game against a team that should be winning more than they are. So I've got the Rams as well, and that leads us to the Monday night game. Should be an entertaining one. I don't really like watching either of these teams, but it should be a very good matchup on paper. At least Seattle heads to San Francisco. 49ers look to stay unbeaten. Jimmy Garoppolo played, I think, in my opinion, his best game of his career last week. Russell Wilson is the MVP right now. I don't think there's any debate about that at this point in the season. But beating San Francisco on the road, a division matchup, NFC West, this is a chance to kind of break that door wide open and really state his case. He could be president by the end of the year if he keeps playing the way he is. Who you got in this matchup?
I got Seattle. I'm all in on Russell Wilson right now.
I am too.
I was a big Andrew Luck guy, and for years I was like, Andrew Luck's better than Russell Wilson. There was always that debate about those two. Luck is gone now, and I can kind of like, I've opened my eyes a little bit more.
I can appreciate the greatness of Russell Wilson.
Yeah, appreciate a little bit more what he's doing with a roster that's not that great.
Yep.
I think he's going to have a sort of a season-defining win and performance in this game.
Yeah, I'm with you. I'm taking Seattle as well. Russell Wilson, the player, is awesome. I still don't like Russell Wilson, the person, because I think he's fake. And I've had people, I had buddies that played at Wisconsin.
If you think he's fake, you have to feel somewhat similar to like that with Kirk. Right?
I do. I do.
It's kind of the same aura.
I said earlier, I don't particularly like Kirk. Like, doesn't do anything for me. He doesn't move the needle, as you might say. But Russell Wilson bothers me just because he comes off like he's so genuine, but then he marries Ciara, and all of a sudden he's like this hip hop superstar that's taking videos with his wife in his bed. Like, those two things don't match to me. Like, you can't be this good Christian boy and then you're marrying, Ciara. Which I don't blame him for that. I'm just saying, like, those two personalities do not, like, they don't mesh. So, anyways, I'm taking Seattle. They're an outstanding team. He's a great quarterback. I can't get over kind of who he is as a person. I just don't buy it. Anyways, that wraps up our picks, which leads into our gambling lock. Last week, both of us failed. Cleveland, I don't know why I bet on them, but I did. -3, that did not work for me. And then obviously you lost your bet on Laces out. Well, they were in. Adam Vinatieri missed that kick, but you can blame that one on the long snapper and the holder.
I can.
So this week, who is your redeemer pick?
I have the over in the Saints-Falcons game. It's at 50.5 right now, at least on my bookie here. 50.5. I think the Saints are going to put up confidently, 35, 38 points. And as a fantasy football owner of Austin Hooper, I know that the Falcons do score touchdowns in garbage time. So I think the Falcons will put up enough garbage time points to get that over to hit. So
say over 50.5, right?
Yeah.
Playing at the Superdome too, which is known for games that kind of get out of hand.
Lends itself to points.
For sure. I like that pick a lot. I think I like that more than mine. I'm taking Kansas City -6. Bet you gotta listen to this podcast and then go straight to your bookie to get that number, because I think Pat Mahomes is going to play and that number is going to jump to like -10. But as of this recording, it's Kansas City -6. I still like that even if Matt Moore is playing. But if Pat Mahomes plays, that's an absolute steal. And Tennessee, I mean, Drew likes Tennessee for some reason, but I'm not with it with Tennessee anymore. Kansas City's going to win that game. And they're definitely going to cover by 6. So that's my lock.
Here's the thing. Okay, I will say this in to kind of play devil's advocate to your pick here. For whatever reason, the Titans, they keep every single game that they play close. Every single game is close.
They do.
So, and I have one of my roommates is a big Titans fan, and it's stressful every single week because they keep every single game close. So that's one thing to keep in mind there. But I will say that, on paper that looks like a solid.
I like your lock a lot better though. I really do. 50.5 in New Orleans. I mean, especially if Matt Ryan plays too. Like even if Matt Schaub plays, like they're still going to do the same thing. But Hooper, Ridley, Jones,
Austin
they're all
Hooper.
score
I think
points.
he's literally the fantasy tight end #1 right now. Austin Hooper.
That's hilarious.
And it's literally all garbage time. Every single week. It's third and fourth quarter. He just lights it up.
Yeah. Yeah, I like that pick. That's great. All right. I think that wraps it up. Do you have any final thoughts that you'd like to say to our audience here?
I do not. No.
I don't think I have anything good either. I just you might like this. I just booked my plane ticket for the Waste Management tournament down in Arizona.
I think I'm actually going to go to that.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a fun time. I've heard. I have not experienced it, but I've heard from
it's
some
very
friends
fun.
that went last year. It's do the Airbnb thing for a few days, and then Super Bowl Sunday is that weekend as well.
It's going to be a wild weekend. I'm excited about that. But yeah, that wraps up the show for this week.
Love to hear you take an interest in golf. That's good.
Yeah, so that's. I don't think it's about the golf. I think I'll be.
I know it's not.
I'll be drinking.